hand on your heart, look up at the sky, smile and say, hey, I'm alive. Thanks for being alive with me today. Hey, and happy today. Welcome to Be Alive with Kate Manser. Today we are going to be going deeper into the rabbit hole of one of my most favorite topics, non-ordinary states of consciousness, and particularly drug-free non-ordinary states of consciousness. We will continue to talk about this topic on the show because I'm so passionate about the ways that we can elevate our life experience, especially in ways that don't require external substances. I am all for the use of psychedelics, and for people that can have a drink and not be like me and want to have 1 or 2 bottles of wine, like, yes, do those things, like take part in those substances. However, I believe passionately that we do not need external substances to get high, baby. We can leverage the neuroplasticity of our brain to enter these non-ordinary states of consciousness on any given day at any moment. One of my favorite ways to do that is to remember our aliveness. Remember that I'm not dead. Look around and feel the pulsing energy around and within me, that I got breath in my chest. I got a heartbeat that is just pumping blood all through my body. And it is a beautiful thing to be alive. So that is just one way, though, to trigger a non-ordinary state of consciousness that doesn't include entheogenic or psychedelic or external substances means. Okay. The topic for today's episode is about the idea that our desire for non-ordinary states of consciousness, or our desire to get high in life, is actually instinctive and part of the human condition. Now, why does this matter? Like, yeah, people like to get high. Like, what is this? How is this going to help me? Right? So let's back up a little bit, and I'm going to tell you exactly how you can leverage your innate desire for non-ordinary states of consciousness to, number one, solve any addictions that you have in your life, and number two, elevate your entire life experience such that you're kind of high a little bit all the time. So back in the early 70s, a scientist named Andrew Weil wrote a book that is called The Natural Mind. One of the topics explored in that book is about the idea that human desire for non-ordinary states of consciousness or getting high is innate. It's part of the human condition. Well, he was lambasted after that book came out. There was actually a searing op-ed piece that came out just totally tearing this idea to shreds, okay? Because for people back in the 60s and 70s who it was like you were either the drug-addled hippie or the 50s, 60s, like picket fence, hard worker, bootstraps person, like it was a very strong divide. And so for someone to come out and say that all these drug-addled hippies amidst the war on drugs, which had just commenced around that time, that they were normal, right? And people who had real jobs and made money and had picket fences and responsibilities could not stomach, I think I'm making a generalization, but had a hard time stomaching the idea that getting high is normal and human. Now, with having many years passed, we've accepted, I think, to a greater degree, this idea that imagination, ecstasy, joy, and all of these high positive emotions, and even non-ordinary states of consciousness and peak experiences like those induced by psychedelics or meditation or breath work or virtual reality experiences, that all of these actually really elevate our experience in life, number one, as well as our personal development. Things have changed, but I want you to think about this idea and how you can apply it to your life to work through any addictions that you have and elevate your life experience. And you're like, Kate, I'm not an alcoholic like you. I don't have addictions. We all have addictions, all of us. And if you are reticent to use the word addiction, find something else. Like, just because I'm an alcoholic doesn't mean that I fit every definition of every alcoholic that has ever lived. My definition of alcoholic is like alcohol was subtracting from my lifetime more than it was adding to it, and I couldn't moderate and control it, so I had to get rid of it. Okay, like that's my definition of an alcoholic. Are you addicted to shopping? Are you addicted to scrolling? Me. Are you addicted to sugar? Are you addicted to cannabis? Do you have something in your life that you feel, you have this sense inside of you that it is making your life worse rather than better? A, or B, it just, the amount of time that you're spending on it is not aligning with your values of how you want to spend your time in life. Or when you do it, it makes you feel generally worse than better, and yet you still find yourself engaging in that habit over and over again. We will call those addictions for the purposes of this conversation. All right. So think about your addictions, plural, possibly, like me. What are you seeking in that behavior? Is it to check out? Is it to feel better about yourself? Is it to get high, right? To experience the high of buying a new thing, or the high of enjoying that brownie or 10 of those brownies. So that's where we can look at this desire for non-ordinary states of consciousness and leverage it to our advantage when we're trying to work through our addictions. So let's say you have this addiction, and when you do it, it makes you feel high, and then you're like, but I don't want to do it, so I'm going to stop doing that thing. And you just white knuckle it, as they say. You kind of like white knuckle your way through, where you're just like, I'm just not going to do that anymore. And it's really hard. That's why we call it white knuckling it. Because what if you need a way to get high in your life? You're just perhaps sort of subconsciously or consciously choosing your mode of getting high as one that's not serving you. What if you intentionally replace that addiction that you have with some other way of getting high or experiencing a non-ordinary state of consciousness in your life that aligns with your values or makes you feel better rather than worse? So let's say you have an addiction to shopping, and instead of trying to just stop shopping and white knuckle it, you pick up something else that gets you high in its place, something adaptive or useful to you that enhances your life rather than detracts from it. Maybe it is hiking. Maybe it is painting. So anytime you would be like at your house and scrolling on Amazon or whatever website you like to scroll for your shopping addiction, that instead of doing that, you are replacing it with some other way of getting high. And you're like, well, what gets me high, Kate? What is an activity in your life that when you engage in it, you experience sort of a flow state? Your problems lift from your shoulders, you lose track of time, and you generally feel better. It's a waking meditation, if you will. And shopping might be that. When I'm doom scrolling, like, my problems have lifted from my shoulders. I have definitely lost track of time. Sometimes I will be there for like 2 hours doom scrolling. Find something else that satisfies that need, that enhances your life, your spirit, your soul, your imagination, your intellect, rather than something that really detracts from it. So it could be running, it could be crocheting, writing, painting. It could be picking up the phone at night and calling a friend or a family member instead of doing that doom scrolling. But what I want you to do is not feel bad about the fact that you are seeking this non-ordinary state of consciousness. You want to feel high. You want to lose track of time. You want to break from thinking. That's 1000% normal and just this inherent aspect of the human condition. So release the guilt and try to replace that behavior, that habit, with something that you can get excited about, that nurtures you rather than detracts from you. Now, what if we have people who have real addictions that we want to help? What do we do? First and foremost, we can never make an addict stop using, whether that addiction is sex, alcohol, drugs, shopping, whatever. There's nothing we can say or do that will break their addiction and get them on the path of rehabilitation. The thing is with addiction is it is a very personal, autonomous thing that it has to come from us. Now, there are things that we can do and say that might create conditions that might make the alcoholic or addict have a realization. But again, like, you cannot make them stop, period. But what can you do if we're going on this assumption that addicts are seeking something that gets them high, and it just so happens to be, in this case, alcohol or fentanyl or Adderall or whatever? What do you think we could do to foster that in their life such that they can start to see that there are other ways to gain that feeling of being high, being stimulated, feeling comfortable and secure, reducing inhibition and insecurity, working through or having a release and a break from the traumas that maybe they're masking by using? Same thing. Take them on a hike. Engage in a deep conversation with them, not about necessarily their drug use. Like, really try to connect with them on a spiritual level. See if they want to come to a meditation group. Just think about ways that you can stimulate their spirit. Because for me personally, I've been sober from alcohol for 5 years. I experienced the most profound awakening of my life 10 years ago. So that means that I experienced the biggest awakening of my life, and I started on this spiritual growth journey, and I was on that journey. I had even written a book. I was speaking. For 5 years before I finally had this revelation of I cannot drink alcohol and I will never drink alcohol again. There was a certain amount of personal growth that I needed to have to realize the things that I needed to realize such that I could have that revelation and put down alcohol forever. So what are the ways that you can stimulate personal growth for someone in your life who is struggling? Sure, do those things that I just said. Take them on a hike, do a meditation class. But the number one thing that you can do is to rock the shit out of your own personal growth. One of the biggest things that helped get me sober was this person who was not even really a close friend of mine from high school that I wasn't in touch with, but we were friends on Facebook. They are this really cool photographer living in LA, and they started posting on Facebook about their sobriety. I think that they had just posted that they stopped drinking, and they posted their sobriety chip a couple of times. And that was really impactful for me because I perceived this person as really cool. Now I got this exposure of this cool person who is showing me that you can have this rad life in LA and this great career and not drink. And that was very impactful for me. We can't get people sober. We can't get people to not be drug addicts. But what we can do is rock on with our bad selves and really walk your path of spiritual growth. Be brave, be courageous, be truly dedicated to your personal growth and development as a human. It's not just reading books, it's really walking the talk. And that's a really big thing for me. One thing I really try to do in my life, and that I pride myself on having received feedback that I do it well, is that I walk the talk. I'm not just reading the books and selling the courses or whatever. I truly try to live this life of aliveness and mortality awareness and love and wisdom in every area of my life. I mess up every single day. I am far from perfect. I am far from enlightened. I think that's why I'm a good teacher, is because I am learning right along with my students. I am learning right along with my clients, and I'm not afraid to talk about when I mess up. What I'm trying to say is you can do that too. And when you do that, people around notice. When you walk the talk, you have a certain energy about you. It's literally like, you got the sauce. When you walk that talk and the people around you notice. When you are courageously slaying your own demons, and when you are courageously slaying your own addictions and vices over and over, because it's an ongoing process, right? It's like whack-a-mole. I got rid of alcohol, and then it's like the sugar came up, and then the sugar is now controlled, and now the scrolling is up. It's like boom, boom. I don't know when it's going to end, but so these addictions keep continuing to crop up for me because I have more spiritual work to do. I am still learning and growing and seeking deeper meaning and trying to live that fuller life. I still want to get high on life, even more than I already am. So drop the shame about your own addictions. 1. 2, drop the judgment about others' addictions. The desire to feel good in life is innate. It's instinctive. It's part of the human condition. We all want it. Everybody is struggling with an addiction of some kind, whether it's an addiction to positive feedback or television or shopping or whatever. Everybody is struggling with vices because that desire to feel good is innate. You can't get anybody else sober. Focus on your own shit. Clean up your side of the street. And if you are struggling with addiction, as we all are, I think to some degree, don't just try to white knuckle yourself out of addiction. Like I said, number 1, work on reducing the amount of guilt that you have around your addiction, the shame, that darkness of this thing that you're like hiding away that you do. And number 2, if you do want to reduce that habit, replace it with something else that gets you high, something that stimulates your spirit, your soul, your intellect. And that is how you can leverage the idea that getting high is part of being alive. But how do you want to get high that makes you feel good, makes you feel better and be better, rather than an addiction that brings you down and darkens your spirit? Thanks for listening today. I love sharing these ideas with you. Let me know what you think. Let me know what your addiction of the moment is and what you are planning to replace it with, so that you can pursue getting high in a more constructive way. And if you are struggling with addiction, especially booze, shopping, sugar, those are my specialties, scrolling, just drop me a note. I'm always down to talk to people who are struggling with addiction, because I know how you feel. Trust me, I do. Thank you so much for joining me on Be Alive with Kate Manzer. We made it another day. Can't wait to talk to you again soon.